Welcome everybody. We have a bit shorter time frame that we originally planned. So I was planning to have a Mentimeter. When we have time, in the end, I will do it. But if not, then I am allowed to skip it. So I would like to introduce the first speaker, Karin Hermansson. Please raise questions after her presentation. Karin.
Thank you, Peter. So, hello everyone, and I'm very pleased to be here. It's my first IDnext event, and I also heard it's my last IDnext event. Hopefully that's not due to my presentation here. So my name is Karin Hermansson. I work with business expansion at BankID, and I will talk about our experience from BankID in Sweden on how to grow a digital identity ecosystem. And I will start with a short, or maybe not so short, but a video to show you a bit of the digital journey in Sweden the last few decades.
For 20 years, we have been a part of changing the Swedish society. Today, identifying yourself digitally is a natural part of everyday life. Make instant mobile payments, file a tax return, or visit a doctor online. Digital identity is something most of us take for granted, but everyday life hasn't always been this way. Before BankID, we stood in line for ATMs. Registering for social benefits was time-consuming, with applications sent by post, and filing tax returns used to look like this in May, when we stood in line outside the tax office with our handwritten forms. In short, everyday life was more complicated and more time-consuming.
Har du övervägt att deklarera på nätet?
Jag har försökt att komma ut på nätet, men jag förstår inte riktigt instruktionerna här, så jag tänkte jag tar det gamla traditionella sättet. Så.
Det var för svårt.
The need for a secure and easy-to-use digital ID was clear, and the government turned to the banks, which at the time had the largest digital customer base. In 2002, the banks joined forces to form the company that invented BankID. The next year, the first signature was made with BankID, and over 27,000 people used the service in the first year. 2011, Mobile BankID was launched, and the following year the instant mobile payment app Swish was introduced. And the rest is, as they say, history. 8.5 million users, 7.1 billion identifications per year, 220 identifications per second. This means that every person identifies themselves more than twice a day, every day, all year round. The ever-growing number of users speaks for itself, and that's something that makes us incredibly proud. What a journey! From a cumbersome paper-based country to a modern digital society. Together with the banks and thousands of companies, we have rebuilt and fundamentally changed the Swedish society. You could say that there is a Sweden before and after BankID. We have revolutionized the Swedish society. BankID secures your identity and privacy.
So I really like this video. It's easy for me as a Swede to believe that, this is how life is in Sweden today, almost fully digital, is the way it's always been. But looking at this video, realizing that a lot has happened in Sweden during the last 20 years. And today in Sweden, you do more or less everything online. Everything from, accessing government services. You get your post in your digital mailbox, not anymore that often in a physical mailbox. You access health services, and not to forget about payments. Sweden is today more or less a cashless society. I don't even remember what year it was when I last saw a Swedish banknote. I don't know if I would recognize them if I saw one today. And BankID has been an important component in enabling this transition and enabling digital services to grow in Sweden. And I always call this my bragging slide, and you've heard some of these numbers already in the movie. But BankID, what BankID is the main digital identity solution in Sweden. It's used both in public industries and in private industries and across multiple different sectors. And as you heard, it started as a solution made by banks, and it has now developed into a solution being part of the critical infrastructure in Sweden. Today we have 8.6 million users, and that is in a country with around 10 million citizens. So more or less everyone that is entitled to have a BankID has a BankID and uses it more than 2 times a day. So it's really a vital part of everyone's daily life in Sweden. And on an annual basis, we're today doing more than 7 billion transactions. And BankID transactions, then I mean using your identity to authenticate yourself for logging into your bank, for example, or for making signing payment transaction, for example. And with this high load in volumes and also being critical infrastructure, we constantly have to operate on a very high availability level. And another area which is very important for a service like BankID is usability. And this is a quite exceptional high NPS score and something we are very proud of. This is something that we are working on a lot, the usability of our solution, and I will talk more about that later on in the presentation. And looking at our growth journey, the first BankID was issued back in 2003. Of course, it wasn't on a smartphone. They weren't around at that point in time. It was BankID on a file or BankID on a card. And the first use case was to file your tax declaration online. And soon after that, the bank started to use the BankID solution in their own operations. And then you see how the growth of unique users has been throughout the years. And to gain this high adoption rate, you have to have a service that is easy to use by everyone, not only the tech-savvy part of the population. So you have to have a solution that is designed no matter the age group of the user or for people with various disabilities. And looking at the yellow curve is the development of BankID transactions over time. Around here in 2010, we issued the first BankID on a mobile application. And here in the end of 2012, you see something is happening with the transaction numbers. Here, the very popular app Swish in Sweden launched, and Swish is a peer-to-peer payment app. And they has integrated with BankID as the means to authenticate their payments. And this is really when BankID is starting to get used in daily life in Sweden. And following this point in time, yes, the pink curve is showing the number of services that has integrated to BankID. And here, after Swish integrated and people started to use it more and more in their daily life, more of these big services that has a lot of touch points with the consumer in their day-to-day life started to integrate to the solution. And with that, you see that both the transaction volumes and also the networking effect of this kind of solution is starting to kick in. And one would think that Sweden is a mature digital country today, and one would expect to see a decline in volumes. In fact, it's the other way around. The ecosystem keeps on growing in all different industry sectors. We see around 100 new services being added or integrating BankID on a monthly basis. And I think this is very interesting that despite the growth we've had in history, we're still growing. And what we're seeing now is that many of the new services doesn't require the high level of security that BankID provides. But BankID is considered as the most convenient way of onboarding new users, and it's also in Sweden expected that the digital service has integrated with BankID. So it has become the market standard for onboarding new customers. And in Sweden, it would be considered very clunky for the user if a digital service asks you to create a username and a new password, or verifying or authenticate yourself with OTP, or get a PIN code in an email. And we have since long reached this tipping point where the ecosystem is selling itself and growing on its own. And I will just do a high fly on the business model and the delivery model. So how does the digital ecosystem work? We have the end users. They go to App Store and Google Play and download BankID. And then they turn to their ID provider. And in the Swedish setup, that is the major retail banks. And the banks are responsible for doing the initial verification of the user's identity. And when that is done, they grant the user a BankID. And the user gets instant access to all of the 1,000 services that has integrated to BankID without the hurdle of creating multiple accounts. And looking at the business model, it's a two-sided model. We have the B2C and the B2B side. So starting on the consumer or the customer side, BankID provides the BankID platform to the banks to issue digital identities to the end users. And on the business side, BankID provides the platform to what we're calling selling banks, or you can say to the banks. They are using it in their own operation to onboard their users, to authenticate the users, to let the users sign agreements, for example. But they are also distributing the service to the market via two channels, either directly to their corporate customers that have a need for an identification solution, or via what we are calling resellers or system integrators that distributes the service to relying parties, which is digital services. And very often these system integrators also add their own products on top of BankID. And this is a model that has been around for the lifetime of BankID. And it's quite a strong model because it gives all the stakeholders in the ecosystem incentives to continue to drive and push forward the ecosystem. So just to summarize some experience from what we have done in Sweden, which I would say is building a digital ecosystem, a bit similar what we're aiming for in the EUDI wallet project, but for Sweden, for a nation, not for full Europe. I would say trust is a key parameter, and that speaks for itself. I mean, without trust from anyone in the identity network, you will not gain high adoption, not from the user point of view or from the service point of view. Security, it's interlinked with trust, but of course you cannot have a weak solution that are vulnerable for any kind of attack or security breach when you're working in this space. And then user-centric, I would really push for this one. Today, I would say we are all competing with big tech when it comes to usability. And with usability, I don't only mean the usability from an end user perspective being a nice UX and intuitive, where should I push next and so on. I also mean usability from the services that are intended to use the solution. I think it's vital that you are understanding what's important for the services in order to gain adoption from the service side. Giving a few examples, in e-commerce, the most important KPI is conversion. And you can lose conversion rate just by adding an extra click in the customer journey or adding a bit of friction. And that could mean for an e-commerce that conversion goes from 98% to 94%. And in e-commerce, the margins are so slim that drop in conversion can mean that the full profit of that e-commerce company is gone, and then they will not use your solution. Looking at the banking side, then security is most important. There you might have a solution that adds frictions in the right point in time, being, for example, sensitive transaction or high-risk transaction. So it's vital that you look both from an end-user perspective and a service perspective when it comes to usability. And I'm going to squeeze in a few words on what BankID are doing in the EUDI wallet projects. And I don't think I need to go into what the EUDI wallet is in this room, so I skip that. And we'll just mention that we are in 2 of the large-scale pilots that are currently ongoing. We're in the EWC and the DC4U, where we are participating as PID issuer and wallet provider. And we're also going to participate in the next round of large-scale pilots. And looking quickly what we're doing in Sweden. So in Sweden, there's going to be an open model, meaning that also private entities can issue EUDI wallets that are certified by the state. And let's see what stand BankID will take there. But what we are doing is that we are not sitting still in the boat. We are adding wallet functionality to our existing solution. The latest addition is a digital identity card, meaning that you can now identify you with your BankID app also in the physical world and sharing information. And with this, me and a lot of other Swedes have started to skip a physical wallet. It's only now when I'm traveling where I have to dig deep down into a drawer somewhere and dust off my old physical wallet to have my national ID card and so on when I'm traveling. And I hope, and I think many with me, is that with the launch of EUDI wallet, we can all skip that physical wallet. We can just have our identity wallet when we are traveling around in Europe. And the million-dollar question is, will the EUDI wallet become successful? Well, to be honest, I don't know. And what you might do when you are unsure of a question, you ask ChatGPT. So I did. That's always a bit. So I want to put forward the conclusion first. Here it says the EUDI wallet has immense potential to transform digital identity management across Europe. And I definitely agree to that.
Was that ChatGPT or McKinsey?
ChatGPT.
I get them mixed up.
ChatGPT, but probably with input from McKinsey. And I agree to this, that there's a great potential and a great vision in the EUDI wallet, but there's also a lot of challenge to overcome. Here we see listed interoperability across EU state, user adoption and usability, trust and security, ecosystem buy-in, and regulatory hurdles. And as you understand from my presentation, I really want to stress the importance of 2, 3, and 4, because this is our real-life experience from building this kind of digital identity ecosystem in Sweden. But I also want to share some light on the positive side. So, reasons for optimism, according to ChatGPT, political will. Of course there is political will. We have the whole European Commission standing behind the EUDI wallet project. Strong use cases, that's exactly what we are doing in the LSPs. We are building and testing strong use cases for the identity wallet. Learnings from past initiatives, maybe this is a bit biased since I'm representing BankID, but I think that's an important role that BankID and other national solutions can bring to the table, some real life learnings and experience. And number 4, involvement of established players. That's exactly what we see in the pilots. We have banks, we have technology providers, governments and others collaborating and working together to make this a reality. And that's really an optimistic and a strong position for being optimistic about this. And finally, my final slide, I was asked to give my view of where the identity wallet is on the Gartner hype cycle. I didn't ask ChatGPT this time, but in my view, it was a very large hype initially for the EUDI wallet and the EIDAS 2.0. It's a great ambition and the vision is great. However, it requires many stakeholders to pitch in, and it's quite a complex ecosystem to coordinate. I also believe that it has been a lot of focus on tech and standards, and maybe not as much focus on the business side and how to really realize this vision. From our experience in Sweden, I would say technology is the easy part. The other thing, getting users on board, getting services on board, getting everyone to work in the same direction has been the complex part. And I think this is things that are coming up to the surface now. Here is where Gartner put identity wallets, so going down in the Trough of Disillusionment. That is always hard to pronunciate. And I support that. I believe that identity wallet is facing, a decline in the curve. Then I can't say when is it going to come up and when it's going to turn. I think we have to do some more work in the LSPs and work on the use cases and how to really realize the vision. Yeah, thank you.
A wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. There's time for one question. Otherwise, get closed.
Who is the owner of Bank ID?
It's still the banks.
Who is the owner of Bank ID?
So who's the owner of Bank ID? As you saw in the video, it's still the same banks that started it more than 20 years ago. So it's a consortium of banks.
Hi, I'm also from Sweden, so I want to actually say that it's. I know what Swedish money look like, and I would say that it's due to the banks taking away all the cash machines and taking away all the offices giving out cash to serve their own interests with a bank ID that we don't have as much cash. But I have a question actually now that if you're going to be part of the wallet system, for instance, I know if you start a crypto company in Sweden, or if you want to do crypto transactions, or if I have sold something or whatever and I don't verify where I've gotten the money from, I will lose my bank account. Especially if you start a crypto business, the banks will shun you and you're not allowed to have one. So what will happen to my digital ID if I do that? Will I be unpersoned then?
Oh, dude, that's a good question. I don't know if that would be something that the banks would turn off your bank ID for.
I would very much like to give word to the next speaker. Can you hold your question to the panel time? Karin,
Yes, thank you very much.
And then I will welcome Koen.
So, my view on wallets, I think most of it has already been said today, but I don't think there are open doors, but it's always good, to hear them an extra time. I think 3 years ago, our expectations were maybe a little bit too high, and now we're doubting what they can do. We will see in the upcoming years. For the people that don't know me, I'm Koen de Jong. I work at Innovalor, and as of today, I'm exactly 5 years in identity. So the last few years I've been working on the EUDI wallet, and before that also on some projects around personal data management. I'll skip this because of time. So 3 years ago I gave a presentation here as well, and I think it's good to have a little look back to the challenges I saw at that time and see where we are now, and then I have some things that are still open. So, in 2021, I asked the audience, will EIDAS be the killer legislation for personal data management, so getting back control of your own data? Yeah, so this was the big thing, of course, and I think this was very much the peak of inflated expectations. This was going to solve everything, all the issues we had with personal data sharing and taking back control over your own data. And then we had very ambitious timelines, which I don't know why anybody ever believed this if I look at it now, because this is way too complex and okay, we're...
Politically motivated, especially.
Yeah, political motivated, that's fair. And also, of course, the wallets were no new thing. First wallets were already ready, so we had Irma or Yivi nowadays, that was and also DataKeeper, two of the Dutch most famous wallets, I would say, which were like publicly announcing we're going to be an EU DI wallet. But I also saw some challenges that we saw from the personal data management field already, why it was not working yet. So, valuable data sources that could not be accessed, no clear sustainable business model, and now not a real choice for the individual. Of course, EIDAS seemed also to address some other challenges, like trust in the ecosystem, standardization, and the chicken-egg problem. Although I expected them to be solved by EIDAS, I'm not sure if they will completely do so, but at least, this was a good step forward. So the rest of it should be easy, right? Okay, let's see. I still see some challenges, at least. So, yeah, there we go. So a few weeks back, I was in Berlin, and Joerg asked, what are the attention points for the EU DI wallet ecosystem? And of course, we've heard them today as well. Business models. The use cases, a lot of stuff around, the tech itself and the regulation itself. But what I see less is what about the end user and what about the relying party? I mean, I know we've been experimenting with relying parties, but not usually with the innovation department, not with the people who in day-to-day life actually, use the service from the business perspective. So I'll address some of these points in the, whatever time I have left. So first of all, the business model. I don't believe there is a good story why you want to be an EU DI wallet now. There's still no clear business model, and at least for the Netherlands, I don't think the Dutch government is going to be willing to pay wallet providers to offer their services, and it's going to be hard to get it in another way.
Quick question. Do you think there's a difference between, do you want to be an EDI wallet or do you want to be a wallet, period?
I think there is definitely good business models for not EU DI wallet providers, and not for EU DI wallet providers.
Okay, I'm going to take you up on that journey.
Yeah, all right. So the EU DI wallet providers face high costs for certification and compliance, and I see a lot of countries that are either going to build the wallet themselves or just going to appoint one. But on the other...
They need to certify a wallet per country. So it's 27 at least.
Yeah, that's my second line. So, but I think this is also the tricky part, because I don't believe they're going to be fully interoperable. So there are opportunities for all organizations that can make the ecosystem a little bit easier. So I mean, tech providers that help to integrate, and that's also, I mean, if I look at today, I have seen, people offering wallets, but it's part of their wider range of services. So they make it easier to integrate, for example, or to issue credentials. Signicat, of course, like an identity service. No, you don't offer wallets, but you make it easy to integrate them.
Someone should.
Yeah, someone should. And I think that's where the money is. And I think also if you look outside of the EU DI part, there's definitely opportunity if you can set up your own small-scale ecosystem. or at least get it out of the EUDI ecosystem. So one of the other challenges is within the use cases. I mean, we do use cases, of course, in the large-scale pilots, but I also, at Innovale, we mostly work for, governmental organizations, and I see like the people who really, work with the citizens, they have no clue what we're talking about and how this will influence it. And if we are talking about wallets, that's completely something different than if those people are talking about their service and then see how the wallet fits in. But they don't really care about the wallet. They care about reliable data and better services. So success of the wallet is not a tech challenge. It's definitely an ecosystem game. And this will also take time to develop. So also if we have wallets in 2026, it will not be finalized at that point in time. It will need time to grow. And I think if we really want to make this successful, and I mean, I'm also, as Joerg calls it, an identity nerd. So I like these kind of events, but if we really want to make it successful, we also need to get out and, get in touch with the people where the wallet will land in the actual use cases. And one of the projects we are doing is with the city of Nijmegen, where we're actually interviewing the end user and, the people within the government organization working directly with the citizens. We just start with super easy use cases, like this is a subscription for people who get allowance for social benefits, so that they get a bus discount basically, and they're now trying to experiment with can we use Yifi to do this to make it a bit easier. My opinion is it's not really easier because this is such a simple use case that it doesn't really make a difference. But then we go, we grow it step by step from, the city perspective. So each time it gets a bit more complex, but also a little bit more political. So the next step we'll do is a city card for people, with lower income, for example, where they can get discounts or even stuff for free. And also one of the things that we try to do is, get away from the, what is a wallet discussion is, we'll take a different perspective. So we'll work it out with the service blueprint and go have a look, how does the wallet fit in, and do we need to flip the whole service blueprint or the service and how it works. And I must say that this one I really like because you still discuss what can I do with a wallet, but no longer is this allowed or is this not allowed? You get questions but then we need the tax authority to issue data. Okay, how are we going to make this happen? And this is a completely different discussion. So yeah, I really like that. And then maybe a next step. Of course, this is a way to think about, do we need EUDI wallets or do we need wallets in general? Do we really need EUDI wallets? As I said, the end user is not waiting for a wallet. It's just technology. They want valuable use cases and use cases made easy. And also, maybe we're not going to put all the attributes into an EUDI wallet because an attestation of attributes is already a trust service independent of whether it's in a certified wallet or not. The only thing that's, probably not the only thing, but one of the nice things about the EUDI wallet is that you have a nice binding between the identity and the attribute. That's something new that the EUDI wallet introduces. But sometimes...
And the user.
Yeah.
There's more binding than that.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, so if we do this wrong, or maybe if we do this good, we will put all our stuff, like all our simple stuff, still in the Google and Apple wallets, and then only if it's really important we will use the EUDI wallet. But on the other hand, it also creates opportunities to set up smaller ecosystems where there is a real value for well, data sharing within that specific ecosystem, and you can easily get the different involved parties together, like the tax authority in my previous example, because it's just like maybe 10 organizations, and you can still get in touch with them instead of like the whole big European ecosystem, and we don't really know. I can't get a cup of coffee with them because I don't really know them or they're so far away. Then the last challenge we need to face, and I stole your slide here, Esther, because I think it's so good. We've already heard this today.
This is what I'm talking about. It's about talking to the citizen, asking what do you want to do with it, because similar to, no one wants to do authentication, no one wants wallets, they need to do something else. And then asking how to get that stuff from the tax authority, from whoever is providing the input. That is not being done right now.
No, and I recently bought a house, and then, in Netherlands you have a solution which collects all your data, and the only question my girlfriend asked is, why do I need to sign in every time?
No, what they do, this is more trickier. They impersonate you. So you log on, and then they scrape your data, and the trick is you're completely liable.
Yeah, but that's also because, well, the Dutch government didn't really solve it in a proper manner. But that's a different discussion, I think.
And that's the Netherlands. Think about how this works in the rest of Europe.
Yeah, agree. So, but of course we need to manage exploitation, and I think most of these have been addressed already. If we want to be what we thought it was, like it's going to be the like SSI, but then large on steroids. It's not SSI, and that's good because it also has like some trust anchors. It does not solve all data sharing challenges. Maybe only for the simple reason that not all data will fit into a wallet because of its data format. And this is definitely an ecosystem game, so it will take time to develop. And we need also need to think about like those small use cases, like getting in your discount cards, that's so that you can use it on a daily basis and not only when you need to do your taxes once a year. And think about like the relying party perspective, the end user perspective, and how the wallets or the attestations of attributes impact their services. I think we're quite in the trough, but also I see people getting more realistic about what the EUDI wallet can and cannot do. So I think it will still be a game changer. And then I think I can give, if there are no further questions. Is there time for questions?
There is time for questions. Yes, sure.
Hi, yes, I have a question regarding we want, or the purpose of this is to give government or to give users proper authentication when using services and stuff like that. But I'm wondering, when we create this, because also looking at the bank ID, services now will demand that you authenticate yourself. But I know that there are a lot of services where we just want to be synonymized or whatever it is. Would these wallets provide a lack to refuse identification, or will we, for everything that we do, have to authenticate ourselves? And then I have another question, if that's okay. Now that government is holding all of our data, browser history, all of that stuff, how do we prevent the government from using national security or criminal investigations to get access to all of this data that we used to hold, to our own?
So the first question, I mean, like, of course, officially the wallet is like voluntary from the end user perspective, but that's very vaguely defined. So there needs to be an alternative, but doesn't say whether this alternative, how good it should be. And I think one of the risks relating to your first question is that it, well, there are a lot of nice things about that the data is now verifiable, but it also makes it harder to lie at the point where you want to be anonymous.
Yeah, and that's the thing with freedom, like, not like, if I just use a service and I say, hey, my name is, I don't know, Bianca, yeah. Of course I will give my address and stuff like that, but there are just some cases where I don't want them to know.
This is a nice concept.
They say this. So I just want to make one other point. I'm not Swedish, but I have been to Sweden, so I know it's a real place. But you shouldn't yell at the banks because, of course, the person who was instrumental in getting rid of cash in Sweden was Bjorn from ABBA. So if you want to pick on somebody, it was Bjorn. It was Bjorn from ABBA. No, he was the founder of the Swedish anti-cash movement. He was the guy. Don't pick on Karin. Pick on Bjorn. It was Bjorn. Karin is innocent. I'm telling you, it was Bjorn. Just to make this point about what the wallet's going to be used for. And you didn't make it clear in the presentation, so now I'm wondering if I've misunderstood. The wallet in the ARF holds verifiable credentials. There's no implication that those verifiable credentials are identification. If I'm logging into Pornhub, I don't want to log in as Dave Birch. I always log in as Han, actually, but that's no, because I need to prove that I'm over 18, but I don't need to prove that I'm me. That's a completely different issue. So the use of the wallet, no, it is. And, the idea that people should be allowed to, I don't know, pick a ridiculous, any example you want, is it my right to be able to log on to Minecraft and groom children? Well, clearly it isn't. So there must be some things you have to prove about yourself. And if we implement verifiable credentials using the ARF properly, that makes life better for people. If we allow people to do stupid things like they have to present their driving license every time they log in, then you're absolutely right. But our responsibility as an industry is to not do that. Our responsibility is to build something on the basis of verifiable credentials, selective disclosure, and the options that people need to function in society. So there's lots of reasons why the European Digital Identity Wallet isn't going to work, but that's not one of them.
Yeah, but if we take bank ID, then
the bank ID is not a wallet.
Go to Pornhub, then you have verified that you're Christina in this case.
Well, of course, but if I'm going to log on to Pornhub, I wouldn't use my bank ID. Well, I wouldn't.
I think we have to conclude this conversation for now.
Maybe if there's time in the panel.
Maybe if there's time in the end. I would like to give the word to Joerg Lenz for the last presentation in this breakout session.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me again. Actually, last year we did a kind of little overview on what's the perspective of digital trust service providers. Currently, we do have 250 qualified trust service providers in the European community or in the European Union. And from that background, for this year, I was asked to look into the subject of this discussion. And so, for those that do not know me, Esther actually did already her first judgment in terms of your slides are typically overloaded, but they are a reference. And so actually, if you want to have these ones that are coming up as infographics right now, then you can use your smartphone and just actually use the QR code in order to download it just straight away and for the conversations in the networking break later on. With regards to the selection of what kind of information we'd like to bring to the table for the conversation today, that's actually the agenda. And the agenda includes, for example, some of the latest findings on where to find actual information on topics we've just discussed a few minutes ago regarding, for example, traceability, and also reference to upcoming technical standards. Where are the gaps in order to reach the slope of enlightenment? Earlier this morning, we heard about a few things to worry about, but also signals for optimism. And I'd like to provide you with a little bit more of these ones. So from the background, actually I'm representing a company with about 900 individuals in a bunch of European countries. And so if you're working on as a pan-European qualified trust service providers with trust services that are accredited in Spain, in France, in Italy, and elsewhere, you'll get all of these questions regarding how does that apply to my geography and how does that apply to my industry. So based on that background, let's just look again into where we are standing. We've heard and seen this before with several images of the Gartner landscape on digital identity, and they're mapping over the years. And so somewhere in that section, closer to the slope of enlightenment, but not there yet, is where we are currently standing. We will have the question later on, Peter, I think, with a Mentimeter, so that you can vote anonymously and not necessarily by hand. And you can make up your mind while actually just viewing that conversation that we're having. If you personally are assuming, if you are consulting, for example, your clients as a software vendor, as a consulting organization, or if you are dealing with budgeting over the next 3 years, when actually do you personally expect that's going to take off? And we've heard in recent conversations, for example, in the University of Milan, that it's going to take much longer than initially hoped for. You may remember 2024, that was actually the time for the von der Leyen Commission #1. And just yesterday, von der Leyen Commission #2 started. So there was a political rationale why they were talking about that's going to be happening, and we have our European digital identity wallet in our pockets right now in 2024. If you do promises beyond your time frame you're responsible for, you're almost unlikely to be believed. And so that is one of the judgments of a university professor in Milan, actually responsible for the so-called Digital Identity Observatory. I'm trying to provide you with a bit of a European landscape. That's what we talked about last year when we had the conversation, where are we standing as of December 2023? And you can go into YouTube, you can find the recording that I was not so over-optimistic when it comes to the projections for 2024. It seems that these kind of predictions actually really stood the test of time. So where are we actually today, and what has happened within the last few days and weeks? One of the most last signals was on last Friday. Last Friday we got 5 additional implementing acts. If you download that stuff, this kind of overview is actually providing you with links. Some of them you can see here on screen, highlighted in blue. That's just accidentally. Well, these links are guiding you to the particular points of the architectural reference framework in its latest version, 1.4.1, or, for example, to the most recent batch in consultation on implementing acts. And in these implementing acts in the draft, first of all, you can look into the drafts and make up your mind if that really is propelling the digital identity ecosystem. And the other thing is to look into the statements that were uploaded. And so, just last Thursday, the announcement was on something that already happened quite a bit earlier. Actually, these implementing acts have been adopted, the first 5 ones, on November 21st. And that's probably the date that we might be seeing as the date when EU digital identity wallets need to be provided either by the member states, or there must be at least one certified in a member state. That might be the official date, so November 21st, 2026. However, there is currently discussion going on, for example, in the German community, that these implementing acts might be seeing some adjustments over time, because at this point in time, they are not referencing to technical standards that are currently under construction. So something that is not so typical for the European Commission approach, that implementing acts are adjusted over time, is much more likely in this environment of the EU Digital Identity Framework. So who's actually working on these things and discussing that stuff? That used to be the EIDAS expert group, and this is now under a new regime called the EU Digital Identity and the Coordination Group, with the initial meeting that was set up on September 17. And if you're curious actually who is your national representative in this environment, there is a list now. Meanwhile, the meeting minutes were published and also the overview about the attendees. So it's typically representatives of the national organization. David, you have a question.
Why does Norway get 2 votes?
Denmark. Well, they're obviously duplicated, so probably they're so prominent, or that's one of the, I mean, in these overviews, you often get some sort of adjustments. And Norway actually, for all those that are watching and are not so familiar, why is Norway in that one of European Union? Because they're part of the Euro Economic Area, but that's something you know very well. So we would have expected even Liechtenstein or Iceland in here. So for all those that are a little bit more familiar, but we definitely currently are missing our friends from the United Kingdom, because they're no longer part of the EU, and there is also no Switzerland in this overview. That has been, by the way, a question just recently on LinkedIn. I am missing some of the countries, also some of the countries of the fringe countries that are around the European Union. So Ukraine, for example, is also not part of these coordination group up to now. So another thing, questions that we get from also banks in the Netherlands. Joerg, I'm sending you an RFI, and in this RFI we have a question that says, are you certified according to EIDAS 2.0, or even more precise, EU Regulation 2024/1183? And well, we cannot be certified at this point in time because the actual certification schemes are under construction. So who is actually working on these certification schemes? Well, ENISA has a mandate. Now it's the topic that Esther and a few other ones were addressing quite often. Well, the member states are finally those that are defining the rules of the game for certification, at least until further notice. And so there is an ad hoc working group. The application date was until November 18, and hopefully most of the qualified trust service providers and those that are intending to become someone like that are working within that ad hoc group together with ENISA in order to have some sort of harmonized approach towards the certification. So, call to action from last Friday, and so if you're feeling bored on Christmas, well, this is your option. December 27 is the deadline for 5 new additional implementing acts. And these include things such as how's actually the access for relying parties to all kinds of sorts of attributes? What is cross-border identity matching all about? And these are just 5 of a total of approximately 42 implementing acts. I'm working in a pan-European organization, and so I know that the actual angle on this draft provided by the European Commission is commented very differently. So if you have Spanish or Italian folks, they're doing this on a pragmatic approach. And sometimes Germans tend to be a little bit overcomplicated. We will be seeing again the various positions from the different countries coming up, so that might be making very good reading in the time frame between Christmas and New Year while that stuff is published. So when we look on these implementing acts, initially, when the regulation was published officially on May 20, then we had two batches that we were talking about. One batch, November 21st, another batch around May 21st next year. Meanwhile, this has split it into at least 3 batches. So we have one package that is concluded, we have one package that is currently open for consultation, and we have another bunch of a package that is primarily addressing the other trust services that are often overlooked, like electronic archiving, for example, or the electronic register delivery, and all that sort of things that will be coming up May 21st. Can we be optimistic that that's going to be a little bit faster? Well, according, for example, to German government, they are optimistic because they believe that for that last segment, we have more technical standards in place, whereas for the European Digital Identity Wallet framework in itself, technical standards are not just under construction, but sometimes under severe discussion. So if you look into the conversations that are done in the technical standardization committees, you can say that in several aspects they agree to disagree. So some stuff of that is yet not really solved, but I mean, it's just a matter of patience. It'll take a little bit of more time than initially planned, but it does not necessarily mean that it's subject to fail. There are variables to consider. So what are we seeing in the different countries now when it comes to the approach of building up such an ecosystem? Well, from the perspective that we are having, well, there are a few points to be looked into in order to understand where we are standing today. Is the government committed to provide a sufficient amount of use cases to propelling it? What could be the frequency of usage of attributes in that case? The incentives that are provided for organizations, also for private players, to participate in that ecosystem. So, in other words, is monetization something that is kept in mind when they are just talking about those fantastic use cases? The market composition and maturity. Well, in the comment that Umberto Bertele from the Italian Milan Polytechnic University, there was one saying that, well, those countries that are partially starting from scratch a little bit more, like Greece, they may be better off because they do not go through the transition phase that, for example, Italy needs to go through from its public digital identity system SPIT towards level of assurance high and the European Digital Identity Wallet. We do have completely different backgrounds. We have a lot of Swedish people in here in the room, Dutch people in the room. So in Sweden, for example, a question that would be offensive in Germany is something that is not so hard to ask. So what are you earning? What's your salary? Don't ask, this is German. So these type of different business cultures are also something that need to be considered. How does it transition work? Is it successful currently right now? We as Namirial are one of the 10 providers in the Italian public digital identity system. What we're seeing yet is that this transition to use now rather the electronic identity on the Italian ID card than the public digital system that's in place, well, that transition is not really propelled and accelerating that much. So, just a few questions to be asked. Monetization, how is the progress regarding the implementing acts? How's the progress regarding the actual technical standards? What is the perceived adoption rate and the assumed adoption rate? And what kind of interoperability? In Italy, that is a very important thing. Just imagine if you are in South Tyrol, close to the Austrian border. We have that similar situation in countries like Luxembourg or Belgium, etc. So all of these aspects are something to be considered on a national basis, so we will see different speeds of adoption. That's what we're 100% sure of. So who's actually going to pay? What's the background regarding the business model? So it could be the issuer paying. That's something that we are now currently having in the German discussion as the top priority. The other two ones are less important in the ongoing conversation that I am seeing in areas like the Sprint Funke model. So I'm speeding up a little bit, as you can guess, with regards to these LSPs. You have seen them. You could look into the various use cases. We know that this is a very, very complex environment. There will be a QR code for downloading at the end again. 148 players in that segment, 20 countries, including Ukraine. So you can guess that this is kind of a mini Europe where compromising is not always easy. So there are various areas where you can look into, and some of them are reporting their stuff quite nicely. Potential, for example, there is an area for remote qualified electronic signatures for signing documents. And this sits with Mr. Herbert Leitold from Graz, and he's actually with an Austrian background. Knowing the free electronic signature for citizens, for non-professional usage, from the background of Austrian Handysignatur and today in ID Austria. And they have a kind of objective list that they're working on, and they've achieved also something in the meantime. Actually, the latest achievement sits in font 8 point in the bottom. They were able to manage to work on an account opening from someone out of Austria with a Greek account opening, so in collaboration and combination with prototypes of a European digital identity wallet. So there is progress in these various large-scale pilots. I'm suggesting you to follow the LinkedIn pages of these large-scale pilots. Esther has just recently published something from EWC, so if you think that there is nothing going on, that's wrong. Digital identity wallet trends. So when we look into what we can expect, who is probably the best issuer of a digital identity wallet? Is it the government or is it a bank? Well, there has been a shift all over Europe in recent months and years. Trust in government, in some countries it's on a relatively high level. These are OECD figures from 2021, but in the last 3 to 4 years, especially in Germany, due to some failed projects, specifically the ID wallet that was launched in 2021, shortly before the German elections back then, and it failed. Due to that fact, the trust in the ability to digitize on a government level is not on a high level in many countries. So the Digital Identity Observatory in Milan does a very good job, Giorgia Dragoni and her team. If you look into what they are monitoring regarding various wallet approaches all over Europe, that's material that they've just shared at Identity Week in Amsterdam, June 11 this year. And so they mapped these various approaches, looked into the types of wallets that are out there, not necessarily all purely identity wallets, so they're doing this on a global scale, also comparing, of course, with what they are seeing in the United States with MDLs put into Google Wallets and Apple Wallets, and the types of attributes of verifiable credentials. There is a sort of a mixture here that sometimes you're mixing identity wallets and crypto wallets. So one of the things that I've learned when talking wallets, always make clear what you're talking about. Just purely payment or crypto or identity or something in a mix of everything. Envisioned use cases, I'm speeding up really fast. That was a vision that initially was presented by the European Commission when it started, but that was in 2021. That is currently not on the shelf applying for a banking loan. That was an official document of the European Commission, how it started. Today, we are discussing about one thing before. This was a showcase at Digital Summit of the German federal government on October 20 in Frankfurt. And that's where they shown, and you can rewatch this, the demo is on YouTube and you've got the link right here, how to actually, after the birth of a child, adjust the family insurance, opening a joint banking account of those two, and the child benefit application. So a mixture between a public and a private use case. Basically, that was staged entertainment, but it shows the vision of what actually the German Federal Minister of the Interior is envisioning as the use case for early 2027. They do not talk about 2026 so much anymore. The German Savings Banks organization, there is one person that I want to give a shout out, Oliver Lauer, not in the room, but one of the most active ones when it comes to really painting the picture of what could specific personas do when they are using a European digital identity wallet? What is their user journey? What is actually the use case deep dive behind it? So what is actually the click step? Again, you can reference to it. I've provided you with the links. The hurdle actually, in Germany especially, is the activation. What's looking quite funny here, that a lady from the Bundesdruckerei is using an ID card, an oversized smartphone. This kind of activation is currently the most important hurdle to face, because if you want to use a European digital identity wallet, at some point in time you need to activate it, and it's actually the first thing to do. So that's something to be kept in mind. So we are having various approaches in different countries. So just as a cross-reference, what you can look into that material, while Peter is already standing up for the Q&A, transitioning to the IT wallet in Italy, for example, is currently just underway. December 4, every iOS user can use this. We have in Sprint, if you are German speaking and if you are interested in that segment, even English speakers, on December 11, there will be an event in Berlin at the Alte Münze when the German initiative regarding an innovation challenge of Sprint is showcasing the European digital identity wallet prototypes and also discussing the German ecosystem. And that's about, like, say, teasers. In short, we do have opportunities and we do have a bunch of challenges that are coming up. So it's kind of homework list. You've heard about stuff of that today, but I'm not so pessimistic that sometimes in between 2026 and 2028, we're gonna get this really off the ground. And this is again the QR code. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joerg. And on that bombshell, are there any questions? I can imagine there will be.
If you're feeling exhausted, yes. Well, but the actual reason for providing this is to bring us on a level where we can dive into these different aspects. So we've heard about that the Germans, for example, they were complaining since August that there is a lack of cross-reference to the standards. They are fearing that we are now seeing different types of certification schemes popping up because there is no common protection profile. So you have a bunch of stakeholders here where you can follow up these discussions. So if you're, for example, from the angle of the electronic signature world, there is the Cloud Signature Consortium that is dealing with exactly these kind of topics. If you are from the angle from the financial world, then you can find the national industry associations. David?
No, well, just on what you said, I mean, I'm a very boring person, so I did read the EAA Implementing Act, and it only refers to the ARF. It doesn't refer to any technical standards. And it says in the Implementing Act, the ARF isn't finalized. So there is nothing you can build on inside there at the
actually,
moment. Traceability
has 2 points. The privacy aspect, and the other one is how to connect a specific interaction with some sort of payment.
Yeah. None of it exists at the moment. But anyway, my question was on the monetization. You skipped past that, but I was curious because I can remember from some other projects I worked on that two of the key monetization areas were access to adult services and age verification, and the other one was travel. But in the EU, there's going to be a separate travel app, and there's going to be a separate age verification app.
There was a tender out for that recently.
So what is the wallet going to do if the two key monetization?
Esther, you might want to make a comment on that.
They might use the wallet, but if the wallet doesn't work, then at least they'll have a travel app. Actually, parts of what's happening in travel app is based on work meals fees. Same for identification.
So the travel app is for people that are not part of the EU like this. And the EU wallet is for EU citizens, right? You have to have so it doesn't make sense.
It's
two
separate
apps.
initiatives, and
And it will stay separate.
It's a solution for the European entry-exit system, which is not going well.
You could have separate apps, especially since you're from the UK.
Okay.
Unless the UK changes its mind and starts getting serious about digital.
You let Norway in. How come Norway?
Well, Norway is paying up their noses and has signed all the trade agreements. They're more European than many member states.
I have to urge you to go to the central area. A wonderful conversation on UDI wallets. It is a very lively conversation, so I think there is future in it. Thank you.